Hello and welcome to Maritime Radar. The fishery crisis, which is due to climate change, is severed by the fact that the world produces about 300 million tons of plastic every year, of which about 8 million tons end up in the ocean, from where it is almost impossible to retrieve. These trillions of plastic pieces last for hundreds of years, affecting the livelihoods and health of people living in the coastal countries, not to mention the impact on marine life. Important sector development issues such as this will be on the front burner on Maritime Radar. I'm Nneoma Obi-Asualo. Africa, which has the world's highest population growth rate, especially in coastal areas, has a poor record of managing waste, as only 10% of its rubbish reaches the dumps, the United Nations estimates, while the rest is left to rot in communities or burned in acrid bonfires. Experts say in 2010, annual mismanaged plastic waste for the African continent was about 4.8 million tons and could reach 11.5 million tons in 2025. 5 African countries are among the top 20 highest contributors to plastic marine debris in the world. Before we get further into today's lineup on the program, let's find out the latest in maritime news.
Nigeria's government says it believes that importers and exporters will benefit immensely from the inland dry ports being established in various parts of the country. Minister of Transportation Muazu Sambo, while commissioning the Dala Inland Dry Port in Kano State, noted that the dry port will help decongest the seaport as well as take shipping and port services closer to importers and exporters further inland. The minister called on national and international maritime practitioners, shipping companies, landlocked countries and port users to take full advantage of the facilities for imports and exports. According to him, the Inland Dry Port Initiative was conceived as part of the government's port reform program and is to be cited around the country. The 6 inland dry ports approved by the Federal Executive Council will be concession to private sector operators on public-private partnership with the strategic framework to build, own, operate, and then transfer the project to the government. President Muhammadu Buhari has approved the appointment of Felicia as the Secretary of the National Union of the National Action Committee on the African Continental Free Trade Area. The appointment, which took effect in December 2022, will run for 4 years. Presidential spokesman Femi Adesina said Awolowo is expected to provide direction to the National Action Committee for effective coordination of relevant stakeholders towards the attainment of Nigeria's strategic national interests. Awolowo served as special assistant to former President Olusegun Obasanjo and the late Umaru Musa Yar'Adua and was the executive director and CEO of the Nigerian Export Promotion Council from 2013 to 2022. The International Maritime Organization Subcommittee on Ship Design and Construction has agreed on the drafts of revised guidelines for the reduction of underwater noise from commercial shipping to address the adverse impact on marine life. The draft guidelines recognize that commercial shipping is one of the main contributors to underwater radiated noise, which has a negative effect on critical life functions for a wide range of marine life, including marine mammals, fish, and invertebrate species, which many coastal indigenous communities depend on for their food, livelihoods, and cultures. The guidelines provide an overview of approaches applicable to designers, shipbuilders, and ship operators to reduce the underwater radiated noise of any given ship. They are intended to assist relevant stakeholders in establishing mechanisms and programs through which noise reduction efforts can be realized. The draft guidelines will now be submitted to the Marine Environment Protection Committee, which meets from 3rd July to 7th July 2023 for approval. For the 14th year in a row, China's Ningbo Husan is the world's busiest port. The port handled over 1.25 billion tons of cargo in 2022. container volume at Zingbo Hussan Port was 33.35 million 20 equipment units, ranking third globally, following Shanghai and Singapore. As at the end of 2022, sea route services provided by Zingbo Hussan Port totaled 300, with an additional 13 new international services. Sea rail combined container volume exceeded 1.45 million 20 equipment units for the first time, growing 20% year on year. There were 64 loading and discharging voyages of 400,000 tons class ore carriers at the ports, with an increase of 10.35% over the previous year.
Welcome back if you're just joining us. This is Maritime Radar, one of the evolving and most pervasive sources of marine pollution that is fast becoming a global concern is the marine litter. I spoke with Dr. Felicia Chinwe Mogo, who is Blue Economy expert and a member expert on Missions United Nations on global assessment of marine environment and social economy. Stay with us. Welcome to the show. Let's start this conversation looking at extensively the meaning of marine litter.
Thank you very much. I must thank you also for having me here today. Yeah, marine litter has several definitions, depending on who or for what purpose is being defined. But the general concept is that marine litter is any persistent anthropogenic material in the form of solid waste that found itself in the marine or coastal environment. Maybe it came in there accidentally, or on purpose, by dumping, or the forces of nature. A lot of things coming through the estuaries, coming from municipal waste, coming from activities at sea, coming from the shipping activities. But for whatever reason, it has really made a space for itself as being, it's now notorious. It doesn't have a good name because of the impact it has in sustainability. That I mean by economic, social, and political aspect of it. It's so devastating in its impact that the United Nations Environment Program has said that marine litter consumes up to $13 billion, every year in its management, because up to about 12 million tons of it is also deposited, and 12 million tons found its way in the marine environment. This is just an estimate. And when you talk about impact, you're just talking about the ones you can calculate. What about the incalculable impacts, like the impacts to human health? The impacts to the environment that you may not be able to recover. Marine litter is persistent because it takes over 400 years to shrink. So you're not talking about it being biodegradable, and it finds itself in different structures of the environment, causing a lot of havoc, actually.
So how do we address the challenge of this marine litter?
The challenge of marine litter is addressed from several points of view. There are international policies, conventions that have been there, like the Bazin Convention on Transboundary Movement of Hazardous Waste, recognizing the fact that litter can also come from transboundary trade and things like that, especially when you talk about illegal dumping, of which West and Central Africa has been known, to be a dumping ground for that. Then, so such conventions like the United Nations Environment Program, the Partnership on Marine Litter Management, and also the recent talk on having a separate convention for marine litter, and it's really getting to be successful because the United Nations General Assembly is talking about it. We have the Life Below the Sea mentioning because of its impact also on that's Sustainable Development Goal 14, because of its impact on biodiversity, which, you know, like for some countries, biodiversity is very important when we talk about foreign exchange earning, and even for protein. It's said that, for example, protein from sheep contributes more than close to 20% of the global protein consumption of the world. So many groups are interested in it. So the convention at Rio Plus 20, which was a United Nations Sustainable Development Goal meeting, the outcome document, the future we want, emphasized in one of the chapters that emphasis should be laid on reducing or close to stopping plastic marine litter by 2050. So countries are making every effort. Countries are developing an action plan for marine litter management, and then extended producers' responsibility is also coming to the fore too. Extended producers' responsibility becomes very important, because you find out that people that are actually suffering the impact of marine litter are not really the generators. So until when we get the producers now to start taking responsibility for that polluter pays principle of a sort, to mind what they put, you know, in the production of plastics, you know, to phase out single plastics. Some countries in Africa have already done it, like Tanzania. They phased plastic and the use of plastic. Some have phased out the use of only single-use plastics, you know. But the issue is that when you phase it out, do you have an alternative? So you need the political will of the government to do that, so that you find an alternative. And there must be a transition plan whereby people are being compensated for, you know, for that, you know, led in the right way to do the right thing. You know, we have so many conventions coming. Even at IMO, the IMO Global is trying to foster cooperation, create awareness, you know, and partner with strategic partners. Yeah, I'm glad to tell you that my NGO is one of the strategic partners of Global, IMO Global, and what we are talking about now is to see how countries will identify the resources. We have few strategic partners. Those of us that are strategic partners, we have to offer, so that you can help, you know, situating things. So and awareness creation is paramount. What you are doing now is very good. Awareness creation, managing it's attitudinal in most cases, managing waste very well at the municipal level, you know, having infrastructures to manage waste, and ensuring that laws put into place are fully implemented. Like from sheep also, you know of Mopol Annex 5 that has to do with management of sheep waste. We have reception facilities for waste in the ship at the land base also, and there should be stringent monitoring by responsible organizations to see that such regulations are really being implemented. There are so many in the course of our discussion.
Yeah.
We may come
you had mentioned biodiversity, and maybe some of our viewers may not understand what that means. So can you take us through what biodiversity means and its impact to humans?
Biodiversity is just talking about the array, the variability of biotic resources we have in the ocean. As we know, the ocean is about 2/3 of the whole Earth mass, you know, and within the ocean are so many resources, of which biodiversity, as I said, were the biotic resources of the ocean, which can be flora when it's plants, or fauna when it's animal origin. And biodiversity, when we talk about biodiversity, as I said earlier on, like fishes, we know the importance of fish for the globe and for nations, and for coastal communities, for example, that do not, especially the coastal poor, that do not have any means of livelihood other than depending on the resources from the ocean, and mostly fishes, So it's so important to them. And this biodiversity, they've been described as being very, very crucial. The one in the marine environment, the more important, that according to one author, there is no place that the biodiversity has become important as it is in the marine environment, because it balances the whole ecological hierarchy, So from the micro organisms there that fishes, for example, feed on, then you now get to man. So it's very, very important for our sustainability. As they form the three pillars of sustainable development, of sustainability, are as found in the biodiversity in the ocean. Because I mentioned earlier, fishes, for example, they find themselves with that such importance. We have other genetic materials that are very, very important in manufacture of drugs for very, very, some of them, all these terminal diseases like cancer, So you have such things there, and you have them just, if you remove the other, you distort the equilibrium, and there may be, it may lead to, like if litter should lead to a noxious situation in the marine environment, there will be a noxious situation. Some biological biological material like the biodiversity may be wiped out. So it's so very important that it is the way the biodiversity is in nature, that is the resources in the ocean that are alive, that they are left the way in that it will make every effort to make them remain balanced. Otherwise, if we disrupt the balance, it may also affect us as humans.
We must ensure that the resources of our waters are sustained.
Yeah.
But we will go on a short break, and when we return, Maritime Radar continues. Stay with us. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Maritime Radar, and I still have with me Dr. Felicia Chinwe Mogo. Before we went on that break, you mentioned the meaning of biodiversity. Then now we want to move to the impact of marine litter to or on biodiversity.
Thank you very much for the question. Yeah, as you may be aware, or as we know, the biodiversity is already are being faced by myriad of issues. We have the climate change, we have the ocean acidification, we have the IUU, the illegal, unauthorized fishing, unreported fishing, and so many, and so many. And then marine litter has been implicated too, because marine litter, for example, carry invasive species, may carry transport, it moves very fast, so you can transport invasive species that can come and displace the indigenous species, and that is it. There is a disequilibrium in the balance of the biological resources, the biodiversity in the ocean. And it carries vectors also that that affect human beings, because eventually what we are talking about, I don't want to say that man is selfish, but everything we are talking about is for the well-being, for the protection and well-being of man. So they also lead because we are talking about, when we're talking about the marine litter we are talking about nowadays, we are emphasizing on plastics. Plastics are products of petrochemicals, and they are persistent. What they can do is to disintegrate. So as they are disintegrating, they can also be releasing toxins, from its make, to the environment, and then be the organisms in marine environment can be consuming that, and that will now be transferred from within the food chain up to man, and will also lead to so many things, to extinction of the ones that cannot withstand it, or then it can lead to end up having toxins, so that when it's being consumed by man, it can lead to accumulated debt. It can lead to little effect, and again, it makes them to the organisms, especially for example fishes, to lose their quality. Quality, and when they lose their quality, they won't be marketable again, and more also when marine litter is in a particular environment, it can occupy the space. Occupying the space now, once it occupies the space, that means it can lead to creation of what we call it another ecological system altogether that may not allow any other organism like animal to grow there and survive. So it's mothers, you know, this thing. And it's interesting that even the exploration of the biodiversity itself also leads to create generation of marine litter, like fishing. Fishing leads to a generation of marine litter in the form of abandoned fishing gear, and or lost in the case of issue in the ocean and the ships off. So this abundant shipping gear, they keep fishing, you know, trapping fishes that nobody is there to harvest. You know, so it's a problem. And also when marine litter is in the environment, it impacts the quantity of fish to captured, because when you now throw it, when the net is now thrown, instead of catching fishes, you're getting plastics or things like that. So it's called ghost fishing. So all those are not really good.
You had mentioned earlier those who constitute this the production of this marine litter. Then what are the role or the action plan for the extended producers, and what is their responsibility?
Yeah, actually, in the waste management hierarchy, the marine litter management hierarchy, if you want to, that is management hierarchy, if you want to manage it, what you're targeting is zero waste, 0 litter in the ocean. To do that, then don't use plastics at all. Is it possible? The government can look at it and see the possibility. Then if you must now, if that's what you're talking about, prevention, you know. So if you must use it, can you reuse? You know, so those are, yeah, so recycle, you know, those are the things that the extended producer's responsibility is expecting to be fulfilled, you know, but those things can be enshrined in national laws of government that are already talking about polluter pays principle. You know, so when they see it like that, and there is a legislation guiding that, then they will curtail that. Then these people, some of them are voiceless.
Do we have any country in Africa that is at the forefront of pushing this action plans?
Oh yeah, I must tell you that what Nigeria did, Maritime Action Plan for Marine Litter, is very, very popular. You know, we achieved that when I was the director in Marine Environment Management Department, and it's still a reference point. And it's even on that capacity that IMO invited me to my NGO to be a member of the Glow Litter. So we have it, and it's a multi-stakeholder document, you know. So, and that's what multi-stakeholder document that stipulates all those actions and encourages the producers, extended producers, for example, to ensure that community where they exist, for example, you have waste receptacles, you know, to collect the waste, you know. And then another part of the action plan is that it's talking about awareness creation. Let them know, because there is this idea in Africa, or concept in Africa, in the rural, I'm sorry to say, no, in the rural communities, for example, that water does not have any enemy. So if they know the impacts marine litter could have on the environment, they will now be interested in protecting it. And in the other case scenario where the marine litter could get into the environment, before we now start tackling it at the source, because that's what any action plan should talk about, tackling it at the source. The rural communities are to be empowered to now convert that into vocation. Like you have the youths picking the plastics, collecting it and reporting, blowing whistle if there is any incident at where they can be paid stipend. That's what the Maritime Action Plan for Marine Litter Management in Nigeria did.
So what is the role, since they are the ones who bear the brunt, what is the role of sensitization for them to know that they have to partner with government to ensure that there's a cleanup?
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean by awareness creation. So you sensitize them, have a campaign concept, because before you get into the community, like in most African countries, they have diverse languages, they have diverse beliefs. So you must have to know who are the heads, and first of all, let them understand the impact, So when you're able to do that, you can now work with the community, in having that interest to manage the waste. There's a community that I've kind of adopted in a way, and they appreciate the fact that, they have to manage the waste very, very well. I did a partnership program with another organization, and we were able to provide them receptacles some time back, and once again by December last year, they are still using it, and they were saying that they've been kind of on daily basis, they appreciate what was done for them, and they group themselves to be clean up their spaces. Another thing that can work well, as is working well in Korea, is to get organizations to adopt beaches, and adopt communities, the way I've tried to do. So you now clean up those communities and let them be part of it, kind of by cleaning the waste, by managing the litter. You're having some source of livelihood.
The scary prediction of fish, plastics being more than fish by 2050. Can you quickly say something about that?
Oh yeah, it's a prediction, and unless actions are put in place and then modeled to see that the prediction will not happen, then you now say that it may not be, So, but with all the actions that are coming up now, even with United Nations Environment Program pushing for a singular convention for plastics in the ocean. They say, is it planet or plastic we are talking about? Which one do we choose? Do we choose to live in this planet, or we choose to leave it for plastics? With the convention coming up, and with the regulation I've seen in it about plastics management, and the awareness that have been created, and the actions of governments and NGOs like my own organization and so many, if it's followed rigidly, it may not be. But if we do nothing, if nothing is done, it will happen, because it's also predicted that the production and consumption of plastics are doubling.
This is a fine place to end this chat. I really enjoyed myself, and it's been really educative. I've had Dr. Felicia Chinwe Mogo. She is a marine environment expert. I must say many thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
News Central TV, Africa's #1 storyteller, has come with the best of both worlds. With a combination of news app and live TV, we ensure that you keep track of the latest headlines, breaking news, and in-depth analysis from professional journalists from around the continent. Download the News Central TV app on Android and iOS and get started today. Don't forget to follow us on News Central's social media platforms. News Central, Africa First.
And that's our show this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed myself. Please join us every week on Maritime Radar as we engage industry experts to provide solutions to the ailing challenges and drive initiatives that will help position the African maritime industry amongst maritime nations. You can also expect the latest in maritime news and industry insights right here. I'm Nneoma Obi-Asualo. Many thanks for your time.